Okay, these are the steps on how to set up and connect your pH probes. So the first thing is we need to make sure that we have Veneer Graphical. And if you don't have that downloaded, then you have to go to CellServe and download it. So we're going to open that up. And we're going to get this screen. Okay. And what we're interested in is in this sensor data collection. So I'm going to take my pH probe and I'm going to click the button here. The red light means it's not connected. Okay. So I'm going to put it right here so you can see what happens. We're going to press sensor collection. Now we've tried to go in here and label most of your probes because what happens in lab, we have so many people all trying to connect. This one matches here. We'll say connect. Notice that the light has gone green. Green means it's connected. All right, so we're good with that. Now, a few things I would suggest. Come up here to the square and click data table and meters. All right. Once we have that, we're ready to go, depending on what you're doing. Okay. Your lab may ask you to do events entry. That's going to be down here, but this one doesn't. All right. This is where we're going to do all our graphs and stuff, but let's focus on just getting connected and learning how to work with it. So now that we have it connected, we're going to take this, we're going to unscrew the lid slightly, right? This is going to enable me to easily pull that out. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to place it, I'm going to screw the lid back on there, and I'm going to place it right there in a beaker, right? Keeps me from dropping it. And now I'll take my pH probe. It has this is a flat one, so I can put it in there easily. I can stir it around. And you have to give it a little time for it to settle down. And so you're just waiting for those numbers that kind of settle down in the area. It's not going to settle down on one solid number and stay on that one number because you're working with ions that are floating back and forth. But as you can see, my number's kind of changing, but kind of staying the same, around 7.969597. So we're going to call this as a 7.97, right? When I get done with it, I need to make sure that I rinse it off with water. Distilled water is preferred. I rinse the end off. Then I take my container, oops. Okay, unscrew the lid slightly, put it in, screw it back on there, and then make sure it stands straight up. Okay, that's how you connect your pH probes. So the very first test you're going to do to get started on this is water testing. And so we're just learning how to work with the pH probes, and I just showed you how to set it up. Okay, so we've taken our samples and we have pipetted into these well plates. So A, B, C, D, and E. Okay, and you can always put a white sheet of paper underneath there to keep track of it. And then what we're going to do is we're simply going to test it. And make sure you clean in between. So here comes my pH probe. And you gotta give it a little chance to get caught up, okay? So kind of stir it around, see it's still, number's still going up. And I just gotta give it a chance to kind of get caught up there, right? So we're still moving, And it looks like we're kind of settling down a little bit. And when it finally settles down, you're going to record your number. Make sure you rinse off with water in between, so 7.25, that's not bad. So repeat with sample B. Again, you got to keep just moving around a little bit. Let those ions get across the membrane so you can see what it is. Okay. And sometimes it bounces around like that, just you're watching numbers to see when it finally settles down on you. You can also do this in test tubes as well. Okay. Okay, so part 2, we're going to examine our soil samples. And so depending on how many soil samples we have, we'll have these labeled in a petri dish. And we try to tell you where they're from. And we want you to include the color, the texture. It's gonna be hard to smell these because you're closed, but put down everything, like even the size of the soil here versus here. Put all those details in as part of your observations. Okay, you're gonna place a little bit of your soil sample, about a 1/2 gram to 1 gram. And then now add a little bit of water to your well plate. You can stir your solution as well. Make sure it gets nice and mixed. And then we're going to add vinegar. We've already placed the universal indicator in there. And we're just going to watch, see what happens. And we're looking for bubbles being given off. And looks like we have some on this sample. That's what we're looking for. So we have bubbles being given off. So that gives us some evidence. We're going to sit and watch it for a little bit. And then we're going to go forward with the rest of our samples. Part 4. Now we're going to look at the baking soda test. So again, we have our white piece of paper behind our well plate. We've labeled what we're doing. This is sample A, baking soda. And now we're going to add a small sample of our soil in there. Now we add a little bit of water to it, about halfway up. And again, you're welcome to stir that. Make sure you've cleaned your stirring rod between samples. Now we're going to bring in our baking soda. It's already been dyed with universal indicator. And again, we're looking for any kind of indication of a reaction. I'm not seeing much with this sample compared to what we saw earlier with the vinegar. And so that gives us some evidence of what's going on. Okay, now we're going to test our sample for calcium carbonate. So a little bit different than the previous ones, but again, I get a little bit of the soil sample and I put it in my well plate. Not adding any water this time. Now we're going to add in 1 molar HCl into the sample, and we are looking for a reaction. And that one was pretty significant there. So this tells us that we have calcium carbonate present in that soil. And I would say a pretty good amount because of how quickly it reacted there. Okay, for this one, your teacher has already made your soil sample water solution. So we'll have test tubes like this. We're gonna take a little bit with a pipette from here and put it into our, it's about all we need. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is we are going to use pH paper. Okay, so we're gonna test with litmus paper first. There's two types, blue and red, and we're just looking for a change on it. So we're saying we're gonna pick it up, put it in, and look at it. Okay, and if they both don't change, then I have a neutral substance. Okay, so based on this, looks like we're pretty neutral. Okay, so next we're gonna use pH paper, and it has a scale on the side of the container, and basically I'm gonna dip it in there and I wanna match the color up. So we stick it in there, I'll match the color up. It's kind of about a 7, looks like. Okay, maybe a little bit darker, right? But maybe an 8. So it's really hard to tell, but you're subjective here. So the last thing we're gonna do is we're gonna use universe indicator, all right? And we're simply gonna put 1 and 2 drops in there. And same idea is we're gonna match up to a scale, okay? And the scale looks very similar to this. So looking at this, looks like maybe it's an 8. So one of the problems with using pH paper is it is subjective. It's hard to tell exactly what the color is. And so in the next test that you're gonna do, test number 7, you're actually gonna use a pH probe to actually get a final number for what our pH of our substance is, okay? Okay, so here's our pH probe, and this is a flat pH probe. We've put our pH solution in a beaker on the side so it doesn't spill. And we're simply gonna put our pH probe in our last well plate for test number 6, okay? And you can stir it around a little bit, try not to spill it, and it's gonna bounce a little bit for you, all right? And that happens sometimes. And it should start settling on, and this one's gonna settle around about 8.3. Okay, so kind of what we estimated at. You can't have negative numbers. Sometimes these do bounce back and forth on a negative. But see right now it's saying on 8.3, and that's our number. Make sure as you finish up with your pH probe, you do rinse the end. So distill water, rinse it off, and then unscrew this a little bit, put that in, screw it back on there, and put it in upright position. That's how you use your pH probes.